Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you so much for coming back to Central Library to help us kick off Season 4 of the LA Made series. I'm Wendy Westgate. I'm part of Los Angeles Library's LA Made team, and this is another team member, Terry Markson. So yay, Terry! So LA Made is a cultural series funded by the National Endowment for the Humanities, and Season 4 is offering 165 entertaining and educational programs, both here at the Taper and at libraries across the system. So to find out what's going on, what's in your neck of the woods or anywhere, you can log on to lapl.org/LAmade, or you can pick up one of the beautiful event calendars I forgot to bring with me, but maybe someone can wave theirs. She's waving, oh yeah, people are waving them. They're on the table where you checked in. So get one on your way out. There's, every year we strive to just bring more unique, interesting things to the to our series. And the story of today's presenters is quite unique. It started with 3 guys at the gym and has grown into its own community of artists and adventurous audience members. We are thrilled to invite back to the LA Made stage the storytellers of Strong Words who made such an impact last season. And by the way, that video is now posted on Los Angeles Public Library's YouTube page, along with many videos of many of our other Taper events. So take a look there. So we're thrilled to have him back this season, and please welcome to the stage the co-founder of Strong Words, Larry Dean Harris, who will introduce today's program.
It's only words, and words are all I have to take your heart away. Are all I have to take your heart away.
Well, good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to Strong Words. My name is Larry Dean Harris, but that doesn't matter at all. All that matters right now is we've got Dave, Alyssa, Kara, and Abby and the Myth.
Well, I used to be a rambler, gambler, falling in the face of the law. But now I'm sinking deeper, deeper
give it up for Alyssa Leno's on the bass.
Well, all that I could ever be was the darker side of me now. Escape the voice inside my head, leave it for the bird. She said, oh, oh, oh. Well, I used to be a rambler, gambler, jumping in the face of the law. But now I'm sinking deeper, deeper, lower than ever before. Oh, 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 oh.
Thank you, guys.
You are in for a treat. It's a smorgasbord of stories. We do the show every month over in Atwater Village. We started in Silver Lake 6 or 7 years ago, and we have just grown like crazy. And it's not a show, it's a community, and you're now part of our community, and we're going to need your dues. So see me after the show, all right? Who wants to hear some stories? Okay, first, the rules. I love them so much. We invite you to take pictures and tweet and respond however you like to the performers. It's an interactive experience, except for Jimmy. Don't feed Jimmy. You'll see. We'll get to that. Our first storyteller, I could not think of a better person to kick off our show, because if there were a family tree of storytellers, she would be right at the heart. Not at the top, at the heart, because she's our cousin, she's our sister, she's our crazy fun aunt. She is the one who inspires us all, and she teaches her own storytelling class if you ever want to get up and do this. Talk to her after the show. She's got a great story to set the tone. Please welcome Claudette Sutherland. I forgot something. This is important. From the original cast of How to Succeed in Business, Claudette Sutherland on Broadway.
Not at the top of the storyteller list. Not at the top. Okay, good afternoon. It's not raining anymore. This is called First You Get a Table. In the 1960s, I was in my 20s, and I lived on a houseboat for 5 years off City Island in the Bronx. Let me say up front that the logic has faded with time, and the decision was flawed, but the memory makes for a good story. My husband and I were young enough to be easily led by the belief that surely one of us knew what they were doing. After all, we were married, we were parents. For starters, we were pathetically inexperienced at the idea of marriage. And for another, we were young enough to be, for the other, oh my gosh, equally inept with money and with reading. Neither of those things stopped us from spending $19,000 on a white elephant of a boat. City Island was in Eastchester Bay, a little west of LaGuardia Airport. Potter's Field, where the indigent were buried, lay just off it on an even smaller island, and across the bay was Rodman's Neck, a spit of land used as a firing range for the New York City police. We had moved from our second-floor walk-up on the east side of Manhattan, just around the corner from Gracie Mansion, where our golden boy mayor, John Lindsay, lived. He was New York City's John Kennedy. Everyone yearned for their own Kennedy. My husband, John, and I had one baby, wanted another, and we're trying to beat what we thought might become the high cost of apartment living in Manhattan, should we move from the rent-controlled two-bedroom apartment, for which we paid under $119 a month. That fact alone should provide insight into our limited worldview. Boat owners don't pay property taxes, John said. All we would pay are the charges to tie up at the dock. I'm not quite sure I knew what property taxes were. I knew even less about boats. Even better, we consulted no one. Both sets of parents were soon to be stunned into silence. The boat was a two-story behemoth originally built by the Navy toward the end of World War II to serve as a temporary office of some sort in the South Pacific. It had long since been sold into civilian use, and each owner had cavalierly added another room or deck with little regard for aesthetics, and certainly none for seaworthiness. 54 feet long and 21 feet wide, it had a flat-bottom wooden hull, an oil furnace, storage for 600 gallons of water, and massive twin-screw diesels. Twin-screw diesels, for the uninitiated, are two giant outboard motor engines that ideally settle down into the water to power the whole affair, handily lifting up when you get to where you're going. They are mounted on the aft deck, or as I continue to call it, the back porch. Since these engines were not functional, we immediately sold them for salvage, immobilizing us and making the term houseboat more house than boat. It went like this. We bought it in October. In the middle of that first winter, we abandoned ship with some regularity to stay with friends on the Upper West Side for a few nights until the killing winds died down. It was the swells that got me, not the chop. In truth, the chop had its own predictable rhythms generated by surface winds or the wake of a passing boat. I liked the sound of the wind and the riggings of the sailboats tied up nearby, the pulsing of water under the hull. But the swells were another matter altogether. The skies would darken to a dirty green. The wind stilled, but then without warning, the barn of a boat would repeatedly lift as if pushed up by some rolling invisible force while the surface of the water stayed oddly calm. Then the whole affair would sickeningly drop straight back down, the floating dock slamming the sides of the hull, while the thick links of chain that tied us to the pilings screamed and grated like a breaking train. Periodically in the winter months, we bundled and booted ourselves and set out to the parking lot way in the distance, managing miraculously to stay upright on the sheet of ice covering several lengths of bucking and lurching dock. We clung to the rope tied between lampposts, cursing the boat, cursing the weather, cursing each other, even cursing our innocent son with each trip. Every year, driving into the city safe and warm, we plotted the ad we would call into the New York Times the next morning in capital letters: houseboat, live aboard, unique New York living, no property taxes. But each spring, by the end of May, when we could leave the windows open and smell the newly cut grass in Pelham Bay Park as it blew across the water, when the hull shifted in low tide, all crunchy and dense, when we could hear the moss bunkers slapping up on the top of the water chased by a school of bluefish, when the days had begun to lengthen and the sun slowed as it set, hanging for a moment behind the skyline of Manhattan, we can hear salsa music from the boombox on a passing fishing boat. Well, we canceled the ad until next January or February. My husband, even though he was a stagehand, was curiously unskilled at building. I, on the other hand, built blindly, making up for my ignorance with resolve and Midwestern grit. Spring-loaded bookcases I had seen in magazines that never did sit quite square. Steps for Brendan to climb into his bunk. Finally, I tackled a table. I bought a hollow door with metal table legs, screwed them on, attached the other end of the door with brackets to the wall in a small galley, then bought a door-sized sheet of Formica to hot glue to the top. Managing the wobbly piece of Formica down the ramp, the dock, and across the gangplank almost made me airborne. I had to position the sheet of Formica on the glue in one smooth move so that every edge was flush, as there would be no give once it made contact. Later, I found that a nail file was perfect for scraping out any bits of food that got stuck in that tiny corner where it was off by a fraction. but I had my table. My husband and I crossed paths in those years. He worked nights in the city when he had a show, and I was an actress cruising in and out of recording studios, singing in rehearsal halls, auditioning ad agencies. At the end of the day, I took the Bellum Bay number 6 train to the end of the line in Bronx, where it rose above the ground. Then I got the city bus that crossed over the I-95 and circled through Pelham Park, Co-op City, rising dull as large cereal boxes in the distance. Sometimes the drawbridge was up, and our bus had to wait by the landfill, a smelly mountain that sanitation trucks like something prehistoric snaked over day and night. It was a homey feeling on that bus because City Island was small enough so that everyone on the bus was a little familiar. There would always be a few Puerto Rican daddies with their little boys sitting across the row of back seats, bait buckets between their feet, holding their rods like lances. Back on the boat after dinner when John had gone to work and I had read my 4-year-old to sleep, with a new baby down for the night, I cleared my table, opened the door to the bow, and sat down and wrote. At night, the skyline of Manhattan was as small as my thumb. The planes lazily circled LaGuardia, then settled down across the water. With the motion of the boat under me, I wrote. I wrote about living on a boat and being cold, about stapling plastic sheeting over the windows and watching it belly out from the wind. I wrote about babies and laundry, about money and where it might come from, about my mother railing against her depression and pleading for her approval. I wrote about wanting to be a star and absolutely sure that I could do it, that I should. I wrote about having married far too young and a false idea of love. I wrote about not being in love with my husband and how lousy that made me feel. I wrote about being frightened and about knocking him dead. I wrote about sex and orgasms and longing and determination and chickenpox and bounced checks and being trapped and feeling mighty anyway. But I also wrote about lobsters and scotch and my hero Howard, a retired fireman who looked after me. He kept his boat, a lovely old Chris Craft cabin cruiser called the Polly, tied up at the first slot on the dock. He walked down to us every afternoon, well, girlie, give me a little kiss, and he'd hold on just a little too long while I kissed his cheek, pulling away and laughing at him. Then I poured him a shot of scotch, and he said, "First of the day." Brendan wrapped himself around his legs, and Howard scooped baby Leo up in one arm. Howard looked after me. I wrote about Wid, the island drunk, who stayed in the laundromat to keep warm in the winter, reading Steppenwolf or Faulkner. Bart, the wedge-faced, black-haired old man from Nova Scotia who did handiwork for us and kept his dementia-possessed wife up in the car in the parking lot, the doors tied shut with rope so she wouldn't hurt herself. No need to put her in a home, no need. I can take care of her. And Marianne, the lesbian who lived on a barge at a mooring and rode into land every morning, then back to her boat at night. How she looked like a man until one day she smiled at me, and in a moment she was a pretty girl. I wrote about the intensely green lines of moss, no bigger than a pencil lead, that grew in the seams of the deck, and how, if you put your face very close to them, they looked and smelled like miniature forests. I wrote about looking down from off the bow at my husband, swimming below me on his back on August nights, his body shimmering with bright phosphorescence, making him look like an angel. I wrote about the nearness of sounds over the water. I wrote about the Latinos from the Bronx who jammed the one main street on weekends, bumper to bumper in a creeping line, radios blaring all the way to the end of the island to buy fried fish and eat outside. The seagulls brazenly diving in dangerous circles around their table and over their children's heads. I was a young girl. I was lonely, but I didn't know that until much later. It wasn't a journal, and it wasn't a diary. I was just talking on paper. Thank you. Thank you, thank you, thank you.
Our next performer is going to look familiar, maybe. He's been selling out his solo show, Wet, a documented journey. I think I got that right, all across the country. Perhaps you saw him on the cover of American Theater magazine. I have a feeling next year you're going to see him here in his own solo show. Wouldn't that be amazing? He's the guy I want to be when I grow up. Please welcome Alex Alfaro.
I gave an old poet $5 on the blue line today. Gave him $5 worth of hope, $5 worth of dope, $5 that'll probably go towards a snow needle over a fast news rope. I gave him $5 worth of smoke inhalation that eases his suicidal contemplation, inhaling that comforting and tingling sensation that eases his addictive yearn, eliminates concern, makes the cold disappear and the fear seem unknown, no longer his own, as his eyes roll over and glaze. This ecstasy is but a moment of escape from his trap maze, for he is a rat. Scum bum who smells like old piss and dry cum. His appearance shrieks of poverty, slums, but we don't care. His mind escaped hell por un tiempo as his soul struggles to free itself from his corrupted temple, while we, his audience, witness the whole spectacle. He scans the train car to see what his chances are of sparring with us for some spare change, so I, being a poet myself, gave him a 5. 5 hard-earned dollars for this learned street scholar as I studied the fine lines on his face and wondered, if the pen is mightier than the sword, why don't you pen a story where your life takes off and soars? You can do that with a worn-out Bic. Instead, he chooses a big lighter to heat up his spoon, while any clean needle from the clinic will do, as he chases dragons to slay him with every stab to his blue line veins. Blue line blues, blue line pains, blue line tragedy, like the man that felt the necessity to jump in front of the blue line train I wrote the other day. But that story is written for another day, 'cause this one is about an old poet who spoke easy like an open mic. His voice was hoarse from a damaged windpipe, with the resonance and melancholy of a downtown night, making him feel the soul and the whole from the gunshot wound earned in the botched robbery of '82, which robbed him of his hopes and dreams, replaced him with the ambition the glass pipe seems, together with broken promises, love lost, his existence forgotten. When devil's will the blackest sins put on, they fool you into believing that the dusk is but the dawn. See, he is but a pawn that lives on a hit-by-hit basis. This is the life of this basehead, wasted. His talent almost is, and I say almost, but his life is all least. He's a frontal lobe lobotomy away from being a beast. He's pouring out his heart. He's a genuine artiste. I feel the words and the pain with each sound that is released, while the other passengers act as if he don't even exist. They just want him to quit his spit, seize his peace, leave in peace. Hey, yo, where the hell is the MTA police? I bet with a rapper's Jesus piece over his neck, he still couldn't find God close to heart, because he's the one who left now. The only difference between this poet and I is that he crapped out of life one too many times after he last rolled dices. He got the whole shit pie, we just get served slices. Justice can be bought, but he cannot afford inflated prices. So he gave up slowly when he decided not to fight it, as he recited passages about his life and how he got blindsided. But this wasn't Poe's Raven, or even Michael Orr, although he was born from a whore. For every hug she almost gave him, that crack pipe needed her more. He spoke about not knowing his real dad and going off to war to provide for his mom, but he didn't, because he came back fucked up from Vietnam. He carried his life on his back in a pack that was dark blue or black, like his lungs from the tar, or his heart from the scars that don't heal with meds for pain. His hair is graying, his teeth decaying, but the words he's saying have so much life in them, while his tattered veins course poisonous venom, and his mangled brain fights to stay active with him. See, I only meant to give him $1 because I'm broke too. But fuck it. I went ahead and gave him my only 5 instead, as he nodded his head while, "God bless you," he quietly said as he passed me by. I swear I almost heard his inner child cry. And in that moment, I felt my own pain subside, and I thanked the highest source for the gift of being alive. I purchased the memory that night with the only 5 that I owned. As I counted my blessings, got off on 5th and Spring, I wondered about this poet and where else he had been in the place he might call home. I gave an old poet $5 on the Blue Line today. 5 measly dollars for this speakeasy scholar. Hey, yo, breathe easy, brother. There is hope in the tomorrow.
Alex Alfaro. Our next storyteller, we got to give her room. So we're going to clear this off, and you'll see. She's a force. When she told this story, gosh, it was 6 or 7 months ago, it's resonated every day. You're welcome. Vicki Juditz.
I'm sitting in a shop on Barn Boulevard in Burbank. Floor-to-ceiling shelves lined with black satin T-straps with 2-inch heels. Perfect for swing, says the exotic salesgirl as I slip on a pair. I stand up, I do a triple step. I think I'm already a better dancer wearing these shoes. I drive over to the mall where there's a store called Sedeka. Almost nobody knows that the letters stand for style, individuality, diversity, expression, converge, culture, and art. The teenage girls with purple hair and tattoos who shop here for retro and rockabilly do not ask about the name. I try on a halter swing dress, lime green, decorated with drawings of small black dogs. Polka dot straps tie around the neck. "You want a petticoat?" asked the sales clerk. Nose ring, safety pins in her ears. I say, "I want one. But I'm old enough to be your mother. Even this dress takes courage." And I think tonight, I will put on my new shoes and my new dress. And I'll drive over to Joe's Cafe where there's a dance floor and a live band. And I'm going to meet up with all the folks from my swing dance class that I take in the room with the mirrored walls on the basement level of the Burbank Mall on Thursday nights. I have been to Joe's once before, about 6 months after I lost my husband. I used to think it was strange to say that you had lost a loved one. But in my husband's case, he was truly lost in the darkness of severe depression, and he saw only one way out. After his death, I accepted every invitation. Coffee, lunch, breakfast, dinner, hike in a canyon, mani-pedi, 10K run to raise money for homeless beagles, and I did, and I would repeat the details of what had occurred over and over to friends and acquaintances and friends of friends until the event became a story that almost seemed to have happened to somebody else. I held on tight to my 14-year-old daughter, and she would say, "Mom, why should I care about the Crusades? About the temperature at which mercury becomes a gas? About solving for X? My father's dead." It was the theater kids and the theater coach and performing as a singing policeman in a musical about gangsters called Save the Music that got her back to school. And after a while, she could stay at school for an entire day. She could stay over at a friend's house. She could stay at our house alone for an evening again. On Wednesday mornings, I started going to Zumba fitness at a martial arts studio in Sherman Oaks. And for an hour, I would lunge and shimmy and yell, "Hey, hey, hey," to the throbbing beat of salsa and hip-hop and samba, free to think of nothing. One morning after class, one of the women, Sal, told us she was the lead singer in a local band called the Crown City Bombers. And wouldn't we all like to come and see her perform at Joe's? A few of us went. That was my first time going to Joe's. At Joe's, up on stage, Sal belted out, "I'm all shook up," in her curve, hugging wiggle skirt, and her bustier with a pattern of red cherries. Her red and orangish hair was pulled back with a scarlet ribbon. Men in their 60s and 70s, and women of all ages, eagerly took to the dance floor. And the men were wearing pinstripe suits and caps, and the women full flared skirts. They had pin curls, they had pillbox hats like it was 1952. I noticed partners constantly changing, couples lasting only the length of one song, and I thought, I have to learn to dance. And so I went online and I found that class at the mall. Bruce, the teacher, told us that he had answered an ad for a Fred Astaire dance instructor at the age of 19. Growing up in Nebraska, it was either that or the Navy. And I met the other students. Mark and Solomon, recently divorced. Jean, whose husband had just died from cancer. Herbie, who had just lost his job. And Marie, who had just moved to LA from Ohio. After a few weeks of lessons, Bruce said it was time to strut our stuff at Joe's. I've been to Joe's, I said. I put on my new dress and my new shoes, and I drive over to Joe's. I almost don't get out of the car. I feel self-conscious in these clothes, but I make myself get out, and I open the door of the bar, and there's everybody from my class. They've already arrived. They've pushed tables together, they've ordered drinks, and they tell me I look terrific in my new dress and shoes. The band launches into Sweet Georgia Brown, and one of the regulars, a man in his 70s, blondish hair, natty plaid pants, crisp white shirt, suspenders, he comes over to our table. He puts his hand out to me, and I say, "Oh my gosh, be patient. I'm just learning. I'm not good." He says, "I'm Tony." Step, step, rock step, turn, wrap, out, stop, turn. Tony is surprisingly strong. In his iron grip, I never falter. I could be mistaken for one of the regulars, I think. At this moment, dancing, no thoughts of the past, no thoughts of the future, spinning. It was Nietzsche, of all people, who said, "We should consider every day lost on which we have not danced at least once."
Vicki Judith, everybody. She shows up at the Moth every once in a while and crushes it and breaks all the other storytellers' dreams. We're halfway there. So, having fun so far? All right. So this really did start with three guys at Bodybuilders Gym who decided to put on a night of stories 7 years ago. And we've done 60 shows since, and I would not have made it past number 3 without our featured artist. I'd like to welcome to the stage my co-collaborator and partner in crime, Michael Hirabayashi.
I'm just going to read, so it's very quick. My interest in photography started when I was a freshman in high school, and my father gave me his old Nikkormat film camera. But more and more nowadays, when more and more with digital photography, it seems like there's a shift away from actually taking the photograph, and more importance seems to be put on the manipulation of that image, post-production, in either Apple Photo or Photoshop or any of the other ones. I'm trying to simplify my process, trying to distill it down to the essence of photography, the minimal retouching, no Photoshop techniques, and no post-production filters and so on. I'm hoping that 90% of my photograph is taken when I push the shutter down. Lately, with my portrait photography, I've been concentrating on trying to do just using natural light, only sunlight. And the photographs that you saw in the lobby were all taken with just natural light. Thank you. I've put together a very short slideshow that I'd like you to take a look at now, and I'll see you on the other side. Shall we play the slideshow, please?
All right, so, Jimmy. What can I tell you about Jimmy that's not in his police dossier? He's our most requested performer, and I don't think I've ever heard an audience spontaneously say, "We love you, Jimmy." Let's find out why. Jimmy Doyle. Jimmy Doyle might be doing a show at the Fringe Fest this summer, but you're going to get to see him now before he gets closed down due to obscenity.
Yes, I may be doing the Hollywood Fringe Festival. I haven't decided yet, and you'll see why. This is an old piece that doesn't involve rapping or African drums. I hope you enjoy it anyway. I was in Dublin in May of 2017 doing my one-man show at the International Gay Theatre Festival. So here's the timeline. One day in December, I was sitting in my office between clients at my day job, and I got a tweet from my friend Brian in Dublin. I hadn't spoken to Brian in almost 10 years. Brian and I met in the 90s in Chicago when he was an unknown folk singer who was opening for Suzanne Vega at the Park West in Chicago. And I was a hot young Chicago improviser at the Second City. 17 or so years later, Brian came to LA to work on a new album. He was and is a really big celebrity in Ireland with gold records and household name status. He had a number of homes and properties he was busy trying to manage with his money manager from across the pond. He'd begun working out in a gym and was in great shape, had shorter but enviably thick hair, and rumor had it he was hung like Rasputin. At the time of his visit, I was being evicted from my apartment. My dog was dying. I was 30 pounds heavier than I am now. I was working at a Polish restaurant with a torn meniscus and had, as yet to be diagnosed, type 2 diabetes. It wasn't a great visit. Things were said. Things were said again. If, as I'd always said, my feelings for Brian were always like that of a brother to his other brother, I'd forgotten to take into account that I actually can't stand my brothers. And he speaks to only one of his 85 or so brothers from the Falls Road in Belfast. I'd forgotten to take into account that both of us had been raised by wolves in war zones, with his, of course, being a more authentic because there were actual bombs, mine being much more Americanized and theoretical. I should have remembered that our common first language wasn't connection. Part of our bond all those years came from being the gay kid in a treacherous, violent Irish family in which defenses and armor were the norm and vulnerability the soft spot for the lance to hit home. Parry and thrust were the dance moves of the day, be it 1977 in war-torn Belfast or 1978 in suicide land of Orla Park, Illinois. In short, we were both cunts in 2007. We forgot to be grown-ups, and we started to be brothers. Visit ended with Brian escaping to someone's house where weeping and sighing and dying dogs weren't the soundtrack, and a curt email from him after he got back to Dublin saying, "Hey, it's Brian. Please never speak to me again, okay?" And honestly, I had no option but to comply with his request. Being me has taught me a thing or two about forgiveness, the limits of my abilities to make amends for certain words that fly out of my PTSD-riddled Scorpio mouth. I had to chalk my mystical and lovely friendship with Brian up to the list of collateral damage my war on life has created. Cut to December 2016. My friend and Brian's, the late, great Kirsty MacColl, has the greatest Christmas song ever made, Fairy Tale of New York. Thank you both. The rest of you basic bitches might want to Google that shit. Kirsty McCall died in 2000 on holiday with two of her sons in Mexico. It was awful. She was killed by a boater as she was scuba diving with her boys. And that December, which was the 15th anniversary of her death, I tweeted her now full-grown sons a couple of pictures I had of their mom. And unbeknownst to me, Brian Kennedy saw those tweets and went to my website and watched my one-man show from 2011 in Chicago, and he tweeted me, "Jimmy Doyle, watched your show and laughed my ass off. Hope you're well, XO, BK." I tweeted back, "Brian, I love you. I'm sorry." And that's all it took. 2 messages, well under 140 characters each, and the 10 years of estrangement were over. It was Christmas time. I was at the day job. I got a Twitter alert, and I had a friend again. Grace. Grace is a blessing that comes for no reason through no work of your own. It just pops in. Grace. 2 days later, my agent called me. I didn't recognize the number. She said, "Are you sitting down?" And I thought, what, are you going to fire me and I won't have auditions? That's already fucking happening. Apparently UPS, where I'd done a spot in 2011, had accidentally run my spot on internet something, on a site with the thing for UPS. And long story short, they owed me $10,000. In the space of 1 week, I had my old friend back, 10 grand, and I was an actor again. Time to buy a plane ticket. So I submitted my show to the International Dublin Gay Theatre Festival for the following June, flagrantly using Brian's celebrity and listing him as producer. I mean, he said, okay. Actually, what he said, I said, "Can I list you as a producer?" And he goes, "That's it?" And I go, "Yeah, just your name." And he goes, "That's cheap, sure." So it was cool. I rehearsed my show. I memorized most of my lines. I did what marketing I could from LA and was assured by the producer of the festival that I should have a good house. I did not. I had no houses. One night, literally playing to one audience member and the box office staff. The International Dublin Gay Theatre Fest, or IDGTF, I don't give 2 fucks for short, had me in one theater space and another show from England running in repertory in another space down the block called Party and Play. Party and Play was about a drug-fueled orgy with young, hot, fit, naked British guys having actual sex on stage to completion. Think about it. Hot guys having sex in front of you, or a middle-aged, handsome enough, hung in sort of a fine way kind of American guy who likes to tell you about his mother's suicide. You've got 15 euros to spend. Where are you going? Although Brian and I had made our peace through tweets, a few private messages, and a phone call before I left, I still didn't know what it would be like to be together again. Would our history of all those years of friendship and the decade of estrangement leave a wound that couldn't be healed? Would old resentments, freshly put to bed, rise up and leave me looking for a place to stay? I brought the emergency credit card just in case. Being more poetic than I, Brian's response to my statement that we were both cunts back in 2007 was, "There was a bit of bad weather between us." Potato, potato. After arriving on a Saturday evening and staying at a gay B&B in the Barbara Streisand suite, I had my first rehearsal at the Pierce Center, home of Irish hero of independence, Padraig Pierce. I grabbed a cab and headed to Brian's in Kilmainham in Dublin, where he was hosting a dinner party for one of his brother's birthdays. I arrived at the front door and was greeted by Deirdre, a friend of Brian's. I came in with all my luggage, my carton of duty-free silk-cut cigarettes, and I saw Brian. The hippie vegan bisexual I'd met in 1990 is now a big old buff fella with shorter but still striking hair. He looked at me and I at him, and he said 2 words: Jimmy Doyle. We hugged each other and introductions were made. Somebody else came to the door. I brought my stuff up to my room, splashed some cold water on my jet-lagged face, and went down to the kitchen. Deirdre's sister Ann had made some sort of curried prawns, which I declined. I had some sparkling water, and everyone else had wine and cocktails. I lit up a cigarette out in the garden just off the kitchen, and Deirdre came up and sat next to me, telling me in her Brenda Vaccaro voice she was thrilled not to be the only one having a fag at this fucking party. I met Brian's brother Stuart, who lives in Belfast and works as a therapist, and his gorgeous girlfriend, who works in Belfast with autistic kids. I met Mary, who smokes hash out of a pipe that Granny Clampett would have used, whose brother Richard was there, operatic tenor and insurance salesman. People who worked in television, Irish language documentaries. Wine was flowing, and I switched to coffee because suddenly I was aware that I was sitting in the garden eating salad and steaks with my Irish tribe. And throughout the night, as we sang and laughed and ate, I looked across the table from time to time, watching the former bisexual vegan hippie I'd met so long ago snarf down his steak as we made jokes about cocks and arses and all the things a good dinner party should include. Our eyes met, mine and Brian, and we smiled like old war buddies at a reunion. I don't have that many gay friends, and the brothers I do have aren't really good for me. So it was worth the money and the travel and all that schlepping to find out that I have a brother again, one of the only gay men on the planet I haven't even offered a blowjob to, to be polite. And there we were, and we were happy, and there was plenty of food, plenty of joy, and plenty of success to go around.
Did I mention that Jimmy may do a show at the Fringe Festival this summer? Oh, I'll hear about it. So we really did. We started at Bodybuilders Gym. And I met so many amazing people there in the last 20 years. I met Michael and Russell is down here somewhere, and Alfredo and Randy, who bartends and makes our monthly event happen so magically, and Paul, and who am I forgetting? David, and And surprisingly, in the sea of men, there was this gorgeous woman who I kind of hated because she did like 100 times as many crunches as I do. And then we stumbled into each other at somewhere else, and it was weird because it's like, she's a gym person and she just should only be at the gym. And I found out she was a writer, and a really exquisite one. And we've been on an amazing series of adventures together. She sure does know how to rock a dress. Please welcome Marlena Nichols.
So there is this Frenchman who grabs me by the hand, and he pulls me out of this small group that I'm in, and he kind of pushes and coaxes and curls my body as we're moving across this enormous stone floor. We're actually in an airplane hangar in Tempelhof Airport in Berlin. And this is all part of this art installation called A Dancer's Day, where the general public gets to kind of hang out with a dance company and see what that life is like. the Frenchman and I, we move kind of so easily together that it surprises both of us. And he looks at me and he says, well, pas mal. You are a dancer. Oh, no, I'm just like, I'm a writer. No. But here's the thing. I always wanted to be a dancer. In fact, it was the only thing I have ever really wanted to be, so much so that I declared it to my parents when I was 5 years old. They're sitting on our green velvet couch down in the den, and it's during a commercial break. We've been watching Baryshnikov on TV, and I say to them, Mother, Father, I would like to devote my life to the dance. And then my father looks at my mother, who is holding back laughter, and says, I blame you for this. But in truth, I have to tell you that it's really my father who was the one who sort of introduced me and influenced me into this decision, if for no other reason than he was the one who dominated the remote control. I mean, I had seen Singing in the Rain way too many times to count in my childhood. He actually had my mother teach me the words to Cabaret so that I would know them properly when I would sort of dance off to the side in front of the TV when it came on. And I think I was the only 5-year-old who knew all the words to Mein lieber Herr from Liza Minnelli. Although with this audience, maybe I'm not the only one. And then I gotta say also, like, how many Monday Night Football games did I watch with him as he was marveling at how the wide receivers would be pivoting and maneuvering, almost certain to be tackled, and then they just run free. And he would look at me and he'd like, that's grace, guts and grace. And that's what I wanted. Motion. I wanted freedom. But I know that what was scaring him when I made this declaration at the time was that we were poor. We were a paycheck-to-paycheck family, and anytime I wanted lessons in something, I had to prove that I not only had that desire to do it, but that I had the potential. So my mother, who's German, she gets on the phone and she starts calling her extended United Nations-sized friends, and she finds that within a week, she has it all down, and I find myself, I'm standing barefoot in this pink frosted kitchen with Madame Irena. And Madame Irena is the Ukrainian. She's a former ballet dancer. About 50 pounds former, but that doesn't matter. And she has the ugliest knotted feet that I have ever seen, but they obey her in a way that I've also never seen, and she makes me very fearful and very giddy at the same time. It's my first audition. So I hold on to the Formica counter that becomes the ballet bar, and she pulls an enormous bobby pin out of her hair, sort of sweeps mine up and puts it in a bun. And then she demonstrates the 5 positions of ballet to me, and I mirror her at every step. And so she becomes very satisfied that I'm doing it all right, and then she puts me through all of these other positions, and she keeps naming them off, very bored, like, plié, relevant, rond de jambe, maroise. And then my parents are out there and they're watching from the breakfast nook. So at the end of my audition, we all sit down. She serves us tap water. And then she sort of makes her proclamation and she says, Marlene has grace, she has rhythm, she has pigeon feet. She will not dance ballet. And it is true. Like, my feet turn in. My hips are wrong. I spend my entire childhood getting yelled at to stop stepping on my own feet. So I'm back in the car, and my mother is actually a little disappointed, and she lets out this heavy sigh and says, well, I guess you will never be the sugar plum fairy. And my father replies to her, thank fucking God. So there is no fancy dance school for me. But my parents are really supportive, so they do sign me up for dance classes at the local community center, Geisman Community Center, where I come under the tutelage of this like beautiful, gorgeous, redheaded bombshell who teaches me about funk and modern and Isadora Duncan. And it's true, we don't dance to Prokofiev or Stravinsky or Tchaikovsky. We dance to Michael and Prince and Madonna, and I love it. So after a couple of years, I start getting like little solo performances, and I get standing ovations in front of all the parents in the middle of the community center gymnasium, and I start thinking, you know, all of those sugar plum fairies can go fuck themselves because I'm it. My dad's always there to applaud. And I dance my way all the way into 8th grade, and that's when my dad, he gets diagnosed with a very serious illness, and I don't always get to make it to class anymore because he's the one who can drive in the family, and he insists that he's the only one that can drive in the family. And I think it's a, it's a rebellion against the illness, and it's a rebellion against becoming obsolete in the family. He also practically stops talking, especially to me. And when he's not working, he's downstairs on our couch, watching TV. So this one afternoon I'm with him, and a commercial comes on our local television station, and it says that Liberty Land theme park is hiring dancers, singers for their summer family-friendly shows. I love Liberty Land. I've been going to Liberty Land every year on my birthday since I was 5. Okay, I read the Zip and Pippin, I ride the Revolution, and I watch their shows. So I go, I watch their medleys of 50s rock and roll, and the girls are all spinning around in poodle skirts. They've got these 70s shows, too, where they play Led Zeppelin, and everybody's got long wigs on, and they're all singing like, Ramble On! And they always bring someone from the audience onto stage to dance with them, and I pray every time that it's going to be me. And it is never me. But now it could be me, because I could be dancing there every day, and I could be earning money for it. So I call the audition hotline, I call it on the down low, and I really try and sound professional, you know? Yes, I have trained in modern and jazz dance for the last 8 years, and I am fluent in both Fosse and flash dance. Do I have a background in ballet? Uh-huh. And they give me a confirmation number, and they tell me an audition time for the following Saturday. The only problem I have, really, is that I don't know how to ask my dad to take me to this audition. And I keep putting it off. So the Saturday arrives, and I put on my leotard and my tights underneath my jeans and my sweatshirt. We take my mom to work, and then as we're driving back home, I sort of just kind of, nonchalantly say, hey, Dad, I have this thing for school that's at Liberty Land. I gotta go at 10. I'm really kind of prepared for the worst, but he just looks at me strange and then says nothing and makes a right turn onto Park Avenue, and we're going to Liberty Land. So we arrive there. He comes with me, and there's that table where you check in, and the clipboard lady takes one look at me, and we're in the South, so in the politest way possible, she says, "Oh, sweetie, I don't think you belong here. How old are you?" And I'm looking around, and I kind of do notice the other dancers warming up. I mean, they've got perfect turnout, perfect splits, and they look like they're about to go to college. So, but it doesn't deter me. And I actually remember, I take off my sweatshirt to show her my red and black striped leotard underneath, as if to say, oh, I got this. And my dad pulls me aside for a moment, and he's like, "Are you sure this is for school?" And that's when I tell him the truth, right? Like, I'm tired. I don't want to dance in a gymnasium anymore. Like, fuck Madame Irena all those years ago. And I got dreams. I want fame. And I know that fame costs. And I know that this is where I start paying in sweat. And I'm fine with that. Just let me dance. So he tells me, he's like, just go change into your jazz shoes. And I wait with the other dancers. And then a few minutes later, the clipboard lady comes with a little number. She pins it to my leotard, and she says, break a leg, honey. So we're lined up in this big room, and I'm telling you, like, it's just like a chorus line, except we're in Memphis. And it's a family-friendly show, so we're not exactly dancing to Prince. We're more dancing to, like, Rockin' Robin. And I gotta say, like, I'm rocking in the treetops, up and down the dance floor. And I get thank you'd out after the first round. Then my dad and we go to Jack Purtle's Chicken after as my reward, and he gives me double biscuits because he's proud of me. And he says, like, you gave it a good shot, Slugger. Yeah, but I didn't get to do me. I didn't get to show him anything. I really wanted to be in the second round. Yeah, I'm sorry about that, he says. I didn't have that much cash on me. I don't think he meant to say that. And I know he didn't mean to say that because I look at him and then he looks at me and he sees that my eyes are getting red and then I see that his eyes are getting red and he tries to cover it all up and he's like, look, you wanted this. You walked in there. You saw you were outclassed, but you still wanted to go in and give it a try. And that takes guts. You got grace, you have guts. My dad, the gangster. And you know, that was the last thing he ever really did for me. Now, my mom puts me in proper ballet classes after my dad passes away, and I'm outclassed by like a 9-year-old, man. They've got perfect turnout, it's perfect arabesques, and I feel like I'm trespassing every time I go into a rehearsal studio. It's just not my world, you know? But I find writing eventually. And writing, I never feel like I'm trespassing when I sit down at my desk. So I'm in that airplane hangar in Berlin, and I'm dancing with this Frenchman. We're just moving across these uneven stones with a grace like I didn't even expect I had. And he asks me again, ben, you dance? But no, I don't. I know, I say, because I'm really embarrassed that I might actually still want this dream. And I say, no, I'm a writer. And he looks at me and he shrugs his shoulders and he's like, maybe today you're both. Thank you.
Lucky for you, she spared you my dance story. You know, I tried, because this is kind of like, you know, a greatest hit show. I wanted to have a little bit of flavor from all the types of storytellers, you know. And Claudette, she paints landscapes, and Alex, like, slams those words together with this grace. It's unbelievable. And Vicky, well, she's just light and joy when she performs. And Marlena, she packs like a dozen characters into that skinny little dress. And Jimmy's Jimmy. No, we love him. And I thought about it. I'm like, well, what do I do? What's my brand? And I realized... a friend of mine used to say, all your plays are basically about your dad and coffee. which is true. But my stories, I think, I try to take events in my past and events that have happened recently and try to make sense of it all and throw in a little theology. And this one's fresh. I finished at 9:10 this morning. So let's take it out for a spin, shall we? That's why I was late for yoga. Russell, did you bring your readers? Yeah. Okay, I might need you. I'll let you know. This one's called The Revolutionary Future of History. A long time ago, a thinner, more wide-eyed version of me with much bigger hair and no need to wear glasses opened a steel door in a sketchy North Toledo neighborhood, wearing my best Tom McCann shoes and my first adult tie that didn't have a big boy on it. I enter the brick windowless building only to discover this magical world filled with rainbow kites and twinkling lights, an autographed photo of Lily St. Cyr, the queen of burlesque, hanging in the bathroom, and this yellow neon ring like the size of a hula hoop bathing the conference room in light and big 80s hipness. I had no idea what this wonderland was or even what the job was, but I knew I wanted in. I just had to convince the Willy Wonka who owned the place. Ron McKinney knew how to work a room. He told the same jokes to the guys on the loading docks that he told the society ladies and the priests. He would toss off these little bonbons like, well, you look nervous as a whore in church. Or my personal favorite, well, she's about as useful as tits on a washboard. They would all laugh and chide, oh, Ron. But everybody loved him. And when he pitched an account, he always got the job because Ron delivered. So I land the job, and on my third day, there's an argument in the conference room right next to my office. Ron's new partner doesn't have the share of his investment capital, and they are calling it quits. What about Larry? Ron asked. Fire him. Ron storms out of the room. Grab your coat, we're going to lunch. Over martinis, because can you think of a better way to get fired? Ron makes me a proposition. If you can do everything he can do, I'll keep you on. It was the first and only lie I would ever tell this man, and he knew it. Yeah. So began my crash course in specking type, how to bid out printing, how to run a stat camera. Ron introduced me to captains of industry and busboys, making sure I always knew their name and they knew mine. All right, Jody, you're here somewhere, right? Jody? Yeah. Okay. This is the part where Jody's going to call me later and bag on me and say, you have got to cut your dad a break and stop ripping him. But any artist in the room will tell you, if there's no family drama and tension, there's no art. Now, don't get me wrong, okay? My dad is an epic character. When my mom died, leaving him with 3 kids and no clue, he stepped up. He taught me the value of hard work, how to change a tire, even bought me my first drum set. But he never believed that I could do great things. Maybe because no one ever believed he could. He always said I needed something to fall back on in case this writing thing didn't work, something more solid like bricklaying or professional football. But Ron invested in me, taught me everything they don't teach in business school. Club soda only at cocktail parties. You have the real drinks later over dinner where you talk about what assholes were at the party. He taught me to treat everyone the same and never lower your price. So when I left Ron for an amazing opportunity, he said, keep your key. He was the first to visit me in New York. Ron loved musical comedy, so I took him to see Forbidden Broadway, a spoof on Broadway musicals. And afterward, over coffee and dessert, I said, wouldn't it be cool if we created a show like that about Toledo, and the last laugh would be ours. 6 months later, I'm back in Toledo, another amazing opportunity, and I get this call from Ron. Hey, you know that show you wanted to write about Toledo? Well, I sold it to Owens Corning for the National Sales Convention. Wait, what? You've got 2 months to get it together. Start writing, kid. This is the point where I should tell you I've never written a show at this point. Well, one really bad musical in college. It was so bad that when we entered the Richard Rodgers Musical Theater Competition, we got a letter saying there was no winner that year. But I was not going to let Ron down, so I got to writing and calling old performer friends from school and rehearsing in the big warehouse at Ron's, and Oh No, Not Toledo was born. We made fun of everybody, from Jamie Farr to the mayor to the most pathetic war in history, the Toledo War. Ohio lost. And for one night only, Toledo laughed itself at itself. A week later, I'm sharing the story with the owner of a little deli in a hardware store in South Toledo, and she says, well, that sounds like fun. We should do it here. Another believer. So we pushed back the hammers and the hoses and set up a small stage, and voila, dinner theater and a hardware store. We were the rage. Oh No, Not Toledo would run for years, and we made so much money. One night after the show, this statuesque blonde approaches me, Jennifer Rockwood, coolest kitten in Toledo, theater goddess, local legend. She takes my hand and whispers in my ear, you're wasting your talent. Write me a play, and I will direct it. We did 6. And guess who was there every night? Ron. So when Ron finally retired after 45 years and sold everything at auction, we walked into the empty warehouse one last time. It was the end of an era, and I gave him a big hug. And as I turned to go, he said, aren't you forgetting something? And over in that dusty corner, that yellow neon hula hoop ring that I always wanted, which my cleaning lady promptly broke within 2 days of returning to LA. It's like they know. Does anybody know what the opposite of a believer is called? Committee. Oh my God, committees are the antithesis to creativity. Nothing good was ever born from a committee. There was no Sistine Chapel decorations committee. The Constitutional Congress was literally John Adams and Thomas Jefferson arguing, you do it, no, you do it, no, you do it. The Republican National Committee, enough said. About the only committee worth any salt would be the Itty Bitty Titty Committee. Don't you miss 4th grade? So I work in advertising. Did I mention that? And about 5 years ago, some idiot client, are there any other kind, thought it would be a good idea to assemble a group of the most unremarkable people in the organization to brainstorm and ideate and think outside the box. And I finally understand what Ron meant when he said tits on a washboard. Now, the purpose of said committees is to kill any worthwhile fresh idea, to squelch creativity, to crush dreams and embrace the hackneyed, the trite, the banal. This is why 9 years after the book, we're still getting cliched knockoffs of Eat, Pray, Love. But there's hope, right? I'm working for this museum. They tell me they want to think outside the box. They want to make history hip and cool. They want to engage the kids. They want robust digital strategies. We're thinking something like look, love, learn. So I put the gears in motion. I think I can do a little better than that. And I think, and I think, and I think, and then it hits me. The revolutionary future of history. Wait, this is too good, too perfect. Nike or Amazon has already used it. I Google it. 0 results. I call my friend Andrea. She's one of my skeptical, really talented friends. And she says, ooh, that's good. So I pitch it to the client. The revolutionary future of history. I can already see it on a t-shirt, a tote bag. And the naysayers and the hand-wringers, they put on their favorite fear goggles. Well, I don't know. And the idea dies in committee. Oh, I'll show you, you museum troglodytes. I'll fix your wagon. I'll write a story. But it's not really a good way to end a story, is it, right? So we're going to jump back to 1995 or so. And I'm directing high school theater, in my spare time, at this really swank school district. And this kid walks into auditions. Good-looking kid, but not like your usual theater kids, They kind of act like pop rocks on a slobbery tongue. They're all just like... Now, I hear he's big man on the baseball team. And he should be strutting, like he's the BMOC. But he's hesitant and sullen. Now, in this school, your biggest worry is usually what series BMW your parents are going to get you for your birthday. I hand him a script. Why don't you read this part? Oh, my God. He's like Bradley Cooper, teenage Sam Rockwell, and Christian Bale all rolled into one. And I say for the show, we're going to do an excerpt from Fences. It's about a baseball player. And you'll be playing the role James Earl Jones played. And he does James Earl proud. When spring musical comes around, turns out he can sing. He nails the lead. He sings jazz like a natural. And when he kisses the girl, he kisses the girl. 20 years later, people in the village still talk about that kiss. So after the show, I talk to his parents and I tell them, I never do this. Showbiz is hard, right, guys? But he's got it. Jay's got it. And I know his grades aren't great, but I could make some calls and write some letters, and we could get him into a good school, like maybe even Juilliard. He's that good. And Dad comes down, crushes the dream. And I don't see him again. So every couple of years, I'm in Toledo, and I ask, whatever happened to Jay? Does anybody know what happened to Jay? And about a year ago, somebody says, he's in the paper. He's an elementary school principal, right? And there he is in the photo, standing in front of a group of kids, playing his guitar and singing for them. Russell, I'm going to need you. So I email him, and I say, how's my superstar? I'm so happy to see that you're still performing. And this is what he emails back.
What you should know, Mr. Harris, is that your belief in me at the tender age of 17 couldn't have come at a better time in my life. I was dealing with some pretty serious depression. My self-worth was non-existent. My parents had me see a psychologist. The psychologist suggested I try out for the school play as a distraction to get me out of the funk that I was in. I had no idea what to expect, and barely made it through the door to meet you on the day of the tryouts. By believing in an unknown, introverted kid and giving him a shot, you changed my life forever. My depression faded away, and my outlook on life was forever altered. Thanks again for reaching out to me, back then and today.
Russell Alexander Oros. Thank you. I was losing my shit. So that's my story. If you can, whenever possible, avoid committees. Be the revolutionary future of someone's history. Because when you take that chance, do you know what happens? This. Thank you. Ooh. I knew I'd get emotional. Sorry about that. All right, so here's the good news. We don't have to put the chairs away or take out the trash or anything like that. We're going to let the band send us out on a high note. Take us home.
White is the color of this room, and I keep knocking it down. Gray, gray, gray is the painting in the hall, and no one here makes a sound. Well, time keeps on blocking me in, and I'm falling behind. Walk out the door once again, and everyone here is blind. We are like ghosts in the sky. I know I'll join them in time. Whoa, let's get tangled in the night. We'll knock on the grave of my door, and no one seems to be home. Bark like an old wounded dog that can't find a bone.
Thanks, you guys. Appreciate it. Do we have time for one more, Larry? All right. We just want to thank Larry again. Let's give him a big, big round of applause. What a beautiful, beautiful community full of artists and just wonderful people. So we're really honored to be here and be a part of this. And once again, we are Abby and the Myth, and we have a few shows coming up. We're playing at Hotel Cafe on February 22nd. Yeah. And that's 8 p.m. So, yeah, come see us. We've got CDs and all that good stuff in the lobby. Take it away, Kara.
In this house that we built for so long, the wood begins to crack and soon the bones are gone. Only fickle minds get tangled in this dance. We read up on the books and soon we burn the maps. The crows are flying, the gate is broken. Oh, it's still the same. Oh, it's still the same. Are you leaving or are you coming? Oh, I'm still to blame. Oh, I'm still to blame. Dressed in white, she is smiling through the glass. Her wings outstretched and she removes her mask. Well, butterflies, they never stay for too long. She strummed all of the strings and now the music's gone. I'm not changing. Who are we fooling? Oh, it's still the same. Oh, it's still the same. Well, are you leaving or are you coming? Oh, I'm still to blame. Oh, I'm still to blame. Yeah. I'm not changing. Who are we fooling? Oh, it's still the same. Oh, it's still the same. Are you leaving or are you coming? Oh, I'm still to blame. Oh, I'm still to blame.
Thank you guys so much. Thank you again, Larry.